He wasn't arrested. He wasn't charged. He simply tried to buy a plane ticket, and China's system erased him. In 2016, lawyer Li Zhaolin opened his bank app and saw a single word stamped across his identity: untrustworthy. No warning, no appeal, just a silent digital execution. His crime? A court decided his apology letter wasn't sincere because he wrote it on April 1st. One date, and suddenly he couldn't travel, borrow money, buy property, or even book a train seat. His life didn't collapse, it was switched off. And here's the terrifying part. Li wasn't a glitch in the system. He was the system working exactly as designed. A prototype, a test subject, proof that a government can now destroy a citizen without ever touching them, simply by turning their own data against them. Because China's new control machine isn't built on laws or police, it's built on algorithms, silence, and fear. And if this digital blacklist can consume one man overnight, what happens when it scales to 1 billion? It already has. By 2023, China had blocked people from buying plane tickets 28 million times. That's not a typo. 28 million. Train tickets? 6 million bans. In 2025 alone, another 200,000 people were added to the blacklist. And those are just the ones we know about. Take Li Hu, an investigative journalist who spent years exposing government corruption. In 2017, he tried to buy a plane ticket and found himself blacklisted for spreading rumors, which really meant telling the truth about officials who didn't want to be exposed. His social media accounts with millions of followers were shut down. He couldn't travel by rail or air. Even hiring a long-distance bus became difficult once his ID was flagged. The courts told him his apology wasn't good enough. They wanted more groveling, more contrition, more proof of obedience. He's still blacklisted today. Or consider the 18-year-old student who earned admission to university in 2018, only to have it revoked because his father had criticized local officials online. The son had done nothing wrong, but in China's social credit system, your family's sins become yours. The punishment didn't stop at the door, it followed bloodlines. Then there's the delivery driver denied loans because of political posts he made years earlier. Posts he'd forgotten about. Posts the algorithm never forgot. According to China's National Development and Reform Commission, by 2023, over 290,000 individuals had been blocked from taking senior management roles or serving as company legal representatives simply because their names appeared on credit blacklists. Not for crimes, not even for serious violations. Sometimes just for unpaid traffic fines or late tax payments that spiraled into bureaucratic nightmares. The system doesn't just punish, it erases. Your job prospects vanish. Your travel rights disappear. Your children's futures get canceled. All without a trial, without a judge, without any human being looking you in the eye and explaining why. Just an algorithm that decided you're untrustworthy. And once that label sticks, it follows you everywhere. What started as scattered pilot programs in a few cities has metastasized into a nationwide dragnet covering over 80% of China's provinces by 2022. The Communist Party calls it the social credit system. Human rights groups call it digital authoritarianism. We call it what it is: a monster that's learned to hunt with terrifying efficiency. But the numbers only tell half the story. The real horror is how it sees you. And the machine doesn't just punish randomly, it sees everything. Every single thing. Start with the cameras. As of 2024, China operates more than 200 million surveillance cameras blanketing its streets, train stations, shopping centers, and neighborhoods. That's roughly one camera for every 7 citizens. The highest per capita surveillance network on Earth. Many cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Chongqing exist under constant electronic watch. But these aren't just recording devices, they're hunters. Equipped with facial recognition technology and artificial intelligence, these cameras can instantly scan faces in a crowd and match them against government databases. They detect walking patterns, vehicle license plates, even body language and emotional states. In some cities, cameras are programmed to identify jaywalkers and display their faces on massive public screens in real time. Digital pillories for the modern age. The Chinese government openly touts programs with dystopian names that sound like they belong in a science fiction nightmare. Skynet covers urban surveillance. Sharp Eyes blankets rural areas, with the explicit goal of achieving 100% coverage of all public spaces with cameras and sensors. Under Sharp Eyes, even small villages have surveillance cameras, and local residents can monitor feeds through special TV boxes and report suspicious activity. It's crowdsourced Big Brother. Neighbors watching neighbors, everyone a potential informant. No dark corner is left unobserved. But the surveillance doesn't stop when you go indoors. Every Chinese citizen's smartphone is effectively a tracking device in their pocket. China's ubiquitous mobile apps, WeChat for messaging and payments, Alipay for transactions, require real name registration and are closely integrated with government systems. These apps constantly collect data on what you say, who you talk to, what you buy, and where you go. During the COVID-19 pandemic, authorities rolled out mandatory health QR code apps that recorded people's movements and health status, further normalizing the idea that scanning your phone everywhere you go is just part of life. All that data funnels into central servers controlled by the state. By early 2025, China's National Credit Information Sharing Platform had collected over 80.7 billion records. Billion! That number covers approximately 180 million businesses and hundreds of millions of individuals. The platform links data from courts, tax authorities, police departments, regulatory agencies, and private tech companies into one massive digital dossier for every person and entity in China. Communications, purchase history, travel itineraries, social media activity, banking records, medical records, even biometric data like faces and fingerprints are linked to national ID profiles. Nothing is truly private. For the Communist Party, big data isn't a buzzword, it's the lifeblood of an unprecedented surveillance regime. Artificial intelligence algorithms crunch through the data to evaluate each person's trustworthiness. The system doesn't sleep, it doesn't forget. It watches 1.4 billion people simultaneously, cataloging every transaction, every movement, every digital footprint. Built systematically since 2014, when the State Council first announced the social credit system as a tool to promote trustworthiness and harmonious society. This infrastructure was designed from the ground up to monitor and control. What officials marketed as reducing corruption and promoting good behavior became something else entirely, a panopticon with teeth. But here's what the cameras can't do alone. They can't make your neighbor afraid of you. They can't turn your best friend into an informant. For that, the system needed something darker. And China found 1 billion enforcers. The social credit system doesn't just rely on cameras and algorithms, it weaponizes human nature itself, specifically fear, ambition, and social pressure. In cities across China, local governments have implemented crowdsourced surveillance programs that reward citizens for reporting each other. Neighbors rat out neighbors for bonus points on their own scores. Colleagues snitch on colleagues to curry favor with authorities. The Communist Party has turned an entire nation into informants. Red armband patrols, volunteer groups authorized by local governments, walk neighborhoods watching for violations. Jaywalking, littering, suspicious gatherings. Any behavior deemed untrustworthy can be logged and reported. These aren't official police, they're ordinary citizens empowered to act as the system's eyes and ears. The results are displayed publicly. At train stations, bus terminals, and even movie theaters, massive electronic screens flash the names and faces of blacklisted individuals. These dishonest person displays serve as digital scarlet letters, public shaming designed to humiliate offenders and warn others. Some cities broadcast the names of blacklisted people before films start. Others run scrolling tickers showing local debt dodgers and rule breakers on screens visible to thousands of daily commuters. The message is clear: misbehavior will be known to all. But the system's cruelty extends beyond individual punishment. It affects social circles like a virus. Chinese state media has explicitly stated that friends and relatives of someone with a low score might also be tainted by association. If your best friend criticizes the government, you lose points too. If your father defaults on a loan, your university admission gets revoked. The system creates a climate where people must not only police their own behavior, but also distance themselves from anyone deemed untrustworthy. This is social control through contagion. In 2018, 17 young people who refused compulsory military service found themselves blacklisted. Not only were they banned from further education, but they couldn't apply for certain jobs and lost access to social benefits. The punishment for defying the state's will was to annihilate their prospects before their adult lives even began. Even pets aren't safe. In the eastern city of Yunnan, authorities created a social credit score specifically for dog owners. Walking your dog without a leash or letting it misbehave could deduct points. If you lost all your points, your pet could be confiscated unless you passed a test on pet regulations. The cumulative effect is suffocating. Many Chinese citizens, especially those in cities, are keenly aware that their every move might be recorded and judged. A 32-year-old entrepreneur told foreign reporters that drivers in his city used to roll past crosswalks or ignore traffic rules. But now, we always stop in front of crosswalks. If you don't stop, you will lose your points. At first, we just worried about losing points, but now we got used to it. It's behavioral engineering through intimidation, training citizens like lab rats with rewards and shocks. And the system works because everyone knows, trust no one, not even family, because everyone's watching and everyone's incentivized to report. So you're thinking, well, just stay off the grid, delete the apps, go dark. Thousands tried that. Exactly 0 succeeded. The Chinese government calls the social credit system voluntary. They claim it's still in pilot phase. They insist you can opt out. It's a lie wrapped in bureaucratic language. By 2022, over 80% of China's provinces, regions, and cities had implemented social credit programs or developed plans to do so. More than 33 million businesses had received corporate credit scores. The infrastructure isn't experimental anymore. It's operational, and it's mandatory in everything but name. Here's how the trap works. You technically can opt out of certain local scoring systems, but you cannot function in modern Chinese society without WeChat or Alipay. These apps, operated by tech giants Tencent and Alibaba, are integrated into every aspect of daily life. Buying groceries, paying rent, booking transportation, accessing government services even. Even many employers require them for work communication. And these companies share data directly with the government. When you use WeChat, the state knows who you're talking to and what you're saying. When you use Alipay, authorities track every purchase. The apps are required by law to use real name registration tied to your national ID. There's no anonymity, no privacy, no escape. So you're free to opt out. You're also free to be unemployed, isolated, and unable to participate in basic economic activity. That's not choice. That's coercion with a smile. Meanwhile, the system's focus has shifted. As of 2024, most of the local government pilots that experimented with individual citizen scores have ended. The famous Roncheng system, where residents received baseline scores of 1,000 points that could rise or fall, made participation voluntary after central government pushback. When German journalists visited the city in 2024, they found that no one cared anymore about collecting points. But that doesn't mean the threat disappeared. It evolved. The corporate social credit system remains highly active and comprehensive. Companies are monitored ruthlessly for regulatory compliance. The Credit China website gives a detailed picture of every business's legal violations. environmental record, and government penalties. This has become a powerful enforcement tool. Businesses with poor scores face fines, heightened scrutiny, operational restrictions, and public blacklisting. And individuals aren't safe either. The judgment defaulter blacklist, maintained by China's Supreme People's Court, remains the most powerful weapon against individuals. Anyone who refuses to pay court-ordered damages, despite having the funds, gets added to this list. Once you're on it, the restrictions are severe and automatic. Banned from flights and high-speed trains, barred from luxury purchases, blocked from sending children to private schools, restricted from certain jobs. In March 2025, China's leadership released a new 23-point policy directive standardizing and expanding the social credit system. The directive emphasized that penalties must be grounded in law, which sounds reasonable until you realize Chinese law is written by the same government that wants absolute control. The new guidelines also call for accelerating the long-delayed social credit law, which will enshrine the entire system into permanent legal framework. Translation: the monster is becoming immortal. You can't opt out of the blacklist system. You can't opt out of government data collection. You can't opt out of automated enforcement. The illusion of choice exists only on paper. In practice, every Chinese citizen and business operates inside this digital cage whether they consent or not. But if you think China's nightmare stays in China, you haven't been paying attention. The monster is already spreading. As of 2024, China has exported surveillance technology to more than 80 countries. These aren't just security cameras. They're complete digital authoritarianism packages, facial recognition systems, social behavior tracking, mobile monitoring tools, and AI-powered analytics designed to identify dissent before it becomes protest. Countries like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Iran, and Pakistan have piloted Chinese surveillance tech in their own populations. Ecuador uses facial recognition systems developed by Chinese companies to monitor its citizens. Serbia installed safe city projects supplied by Huawei. Even some Western municipalities have tested Chinese-made surveillance equipment for smart city initiatives. The appeal is obvious. China has proven that high-tech surveillance works. Beijing openly markets these tools through state-owned enterprises and private companies with close government ties. At international technology conferences, Chinese firms advertise governance solutions and public security systems, euphemisms for the same surveillance infrastructure used domestically. The pitch is simple. Do you want to control your population more effectively? We've perfected the technology. We'll sell you the blueprint. And many governments are buying. China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure investment program spanning Asia, Africa, and Europe, often includes technology transfers as part of development packages. Countries that accept Chinese loans for ports and railways also get Chinese surveillance systems. Some experts warn that this creates dependencies. Nations become reliant on Chinese tech companies for maintenance and upgrades, giving Beijing potential leverage over their domestic security infrastructure. But the threat goes beyond intentional exports. Even democratic countries are adopting similar technologies independently. The United States uses license plate readers and predictive policing algorithms. The United Kingdom operates extensive CCTV networks. Private companies worldwide collect massive amounts of personal data for commercial purposes with minimal oversight. The infrastructure for comprehensive surveillance exists almost everywhere now. What China has done is prove it can be weaponized for political control. The difference is integration and intent. Western surveillance tends to be fragmented. Different agencies and companies collect data that isn't always shared or centrally coordinated. China's innovation was creating a unified system where everything connects: courts, police, tax authorities, regulatory agencies, tech companies, all feeding into one massive database with automated enforcement mechanisms. That's the blueprint other authoritarian regimes want to copy, and China is happy to teach them. In late 2024, Chinese officials began discussing how social credit concepts could apply to international dealings, potentially raiding foreign companies that export to China or using credit records in Belt and Road projects. Some analysts predict 2025 might see the first cross-border social credit cooperation agreements with friendly countries. The monster isn't just growing, it's metastasizing. What started as an experiment in one authoritarian state is becoming a global model for digital repression. And what comes next makes everything we've seen look like a beta test, because the system isn't just punishing anymore, it's predicting. China's social credit system is no longer just reactive, punishing behavior after it happens. It's becoming predictive, using artificial intelligence to identify threats before they materialize. New technologies being developed and tested include emotion recognition systems that analyze facial expressions to assess loyalty and trustworthiness, gait analysis that identifies individuals by how they walk, even when faces are obscured, voice stress detection to flag suspicious conversations, behavioral prediction algorithms that claim to forecast who might engage in problematic activity based on patterns in their data. This is pre-crime surveillance. The Chinese government's 2024-2025 action plan, released by the National Development and Reform Commission in June 2024, outlines priorities for the next phase. Key goals include finalizing the social credit law to provide permanent legal foundation, improving data regulation and integration across ministries, enhancing the Credit China platform for public access to credit records, and continuing work on citizen incentive point systems. Translation: they're not slowing down, they're accelerating. The plan emphasizes using blockchain technology for data security and creating standardized procedures for who can access what information. It sounds technical and boring, but what it really means is making the system more efficient, more comprehensive, and harder to escape. Xinjiang serves as the testing ground for the darkest applications. In this predominantly Muslim region, Chinese authorities have erected a surveillance monstrosity that goes beyond even the social credit system. Ubiquitous checkpoints, compulsory smartphone spyware, DNA and iris scan databases, AI that flags anything unusual. As many as 1 million Uyghur and other minority citizens have been sent to internment camps for re-education, in part enabled by digital tracking tools that identified people based on religious practice, travel history, and social connections. The social credit system exists on the same technological continuum. What happens in Xinjiang could happen anywhere in China, and what happens in China could happen anywhere the technology spreads. Some observers warn that China is pioneering the world's first truly digital totalitarian state, one where technology enables a level of population control that previous authoritarian regimes could only dream of. The Stasi needed armies of informants. The Soviet NKVD required massive bureaucracies. China's system runs on algorithms and automation, and it works with terrifying efficiency. By 2019, Chinese officials proudly announced that 3.5 million people had hurriedly paid overdue fines once they found themselves restricted by social credit sanctions. Turn the screws by cutting off someone's ability to function in society, and they fall in line. No need for messy trials or police knocking on doors in the middle of the night. The system invisibly nudges or outright forces people to conform. Li Xiaolin, the lawyer from our opening, eventually wrote another groveling apology letter and got himself removed from the travel blacklist. But even after that humiliation, he discovered he was still barred from certain financial services. The bureaucracy offered no clear path to full redemption. Clearing your name becomes a Kafkaesque ordeal that might never truly end. This is tyranny by technology, social management via algorithm, a monster that doesn't sleep, doesn't forget, and never stops hunting. So what does this all mean? China's social credit system has become exactly what human rights advocates feared, a comprehensive apparatus of surveillance and control that can destroy lives without ever laying a hand on anyone. What began as a technocratic idea to boost trust in society has morphed into a nightmarish tool for manufacturing obedience through fear. The really chilling part? It works. The system has proven that a government can monitor 1.4 billion people simultaneously, catalog their every action, and automatically punish disobedience with algorithmic precision. No judges needed, no juries, no human discretion, just code that decides who gets to participate in society and who gets erased. And the world is watching. Authoritarian governments see China's model and recognize its potential. Democratic nations see the technology and adopt pieces of it without fully considering the implications. Tech companies everywhere collect similar data for profit, creating infrastructure that could be weaponized if political winds shift. The monster China built didn't just prove that comprehensive digital surveillance is possible. It proves it's effective. It proved it scales. It proved that you can turn an entire population into informants and make them police each other. That's the real horror. Not that one authoritarian regime oppresses its people. That's tragically common throughout history. But that China has created a working blueprint for automated oppression that requires minimal human labor and maximum technological efficiency. Yu Hu, the journalist, remains blacklisted. The student who lost his university spot carries that burden. Li Xiaolin still navigates bureaucratic mazes trying to fully clear his name. These aren't isolated incidents. They're features of a system designed to make trustworthy people benefit everywhere, and untrustworthy people restricted everywhere, as the official slogan promises. But trustworthiness in this context doesn't mean honesty or integrity. It means obedience, compliance, never questioning authority, never exposing corruption, never stepping out of line. One date on an apology letter, April 1st, and your life gets switched off. That's not justice, that's algorithmic execution. And if we're not careful, it's a glimpse of what the future holds for all of us. Because once a system like this is in place, it's incredibly difficult to reverse. The infrastructure becomes embedded. The data keeps accumulating, the algorithms keep learning, and the government, any government, that controls it gains power that would make previous dictators weep with envy. China didn't just build a surveillance system, they built a working model for erasing anyone, anywhere, with nothing more than code. They proved you can destroy a citizen without ever touching one, simply by turning their own data against them. And the terrifying part? The monster works.